mentioning that the US presidential election is just around the corner. So it is not a surprise that we are seeing these kind of things with Bitcoin and also with other assets. Welcome back to the Xchief YouTube channel. I'm Martinez, trader and analyst for Xchief, here to bring you an in-depth look at the latest market developments. With the US presidential elections just days away, we are seeing some interesting moves in assets like Bitcoin, gold, and the US dollar. Today, we will dive into the details of how a potential Trump win could drive further upside for Bitcoin and gold, while the broader outlook for these assets remains strong regardless of the election outcome. So, stay tuned until the end. Let's start. And as always, we start with the economic calendar in order to have all the fundamentals we need to take into account for the next week. On Tuesday, November 5th at 9 a.m., the ISM Services PMI for the US will be released. This index tracks the activity in the services sector, which is a huge part of the US economy. A reading above 50 means the sector is growing, while below 50 signals contraction. It's an important indicator that can impact market sentiment depending on the result. Also on Tuesday, November 5th, the US is holding its presidential and congressional elections. The outcome here can lead to market volatility, as they will shape future economic and fiscal policies, potentially impacting the US dollar and stock markets. On Thursday, November 7th at 6 a.m., the Bank of England will release several key reports, including the Monetary Policy Report and the Monetary Policy Treatment, including the Monetary Policy Report and the Monetary Policy Summary. These give insight into the UK's economic outlook and interest rate decisions. We'll also see the official bank rate both and the bank rate itself. Any hints of changes or upcoming changes can have a strong impact on the British pound. At 7:30 a.m. on Thursday, the US unemployment claims report will be released. This measures the number of people filing for unemployment benefits and is a good indicator of the labor market's health. A rise in claims could signal economic trouble, while a drop suggests strength, which can influence Fed policy expectations. Later that day, at 1 p.m., we'll see the Federal Reserve's decision on the federal funds rate, followed by the FOMC statement. This interest rate is crucial because it affects borrowing costs across the economy and can impact assets like the dollar and the government bonds. At 1:30 p.m., the FOMC will hold a press conference to explain their policy decisions and future plans, which often causes big moves in the market. And now heading into the most important news of the week, we will start mentioning that the US presidential election is just around the corner, and it's a hot topic among investors who are speculating which candidate might be better for financial markets. Analysts at JP Morgan are siding with a potentially stronger outcome for Bitcoin and gold if Donald Trump wins. In a recent report, JP Morgan analysts led by Managing Director Nicholas P. noted that retail investors are increasingly drawn to the debasement trade, pushing up demand for Bitcoin and gold ETFs. This surge is also visible in meme and A tokens, whose market caps have been outperforming. Following Bitcoin's recent rally above $73,000, US listed spot Bitcoin ETFs saw their assets under management jump by over $2.27 billion in the past week. This marks the third largest month for Bitcoin ETF inflows since January, largely driven by retail investors seeking alternative assets to hedge against currency devaluation. However, institutional investors took a step back, as JP Morgan's analysis reveals that they've mostly paused their Bitcoin futures activity recently. According to cumulative open interest data from CME Bitcoin futures, the market seems a bit overbought, which could lead to some vulnerability going forward. Gold ETFs are also seeing solid inflows, once again led by retail investors, while institutional interest in gold futures has tapered off similarly. JP Morgan analysts conclude that if a Trump win boosts retail investors' appetite for risk assets and fuels the debasement trade, we could see further upside for both Bitcoin and gold. David Morrison, senior market analyst at Trade Nation, weighed in, suggesting that while Trump is perceived as more favorable for crypto, his re-election might not have a significant impact on gold. He noted, gold is already in a bull market, and this is unlikely to change no matter who wins. Lower interest rates and a weaker dollar will continue to support gold, but it's unlikely that either Trump or Harris can influence the Fed's actions much, even if Trump pushes for rate cuts. With Fed Chair Jerome Powell having 2 years left in his term, Morrison highlighted that the president doesn't have the power to dismiss him, no matter how challenging Trump might make things, as he did in his previous term. Morrison also emphasized that the core drivers for gold remain intact, including geopolitical tensions and strong central bank purchases, especially from countries like China. Nikki Shields, head of research and metals strategy at MKS Pump, shared her perspective on gold's path toward the end of the year. Gold's trajectory is quite binary, depending on the election outcome, upcoming U.S. economic data, and the Fed's outlook, she said. Shields projects that gold could hit $2,500 or even $3,000, though this depends on factors like potential overpositioning or stronger than expected U.S. data, which could lead to a more hawkish Fed. She advised gold investors to stay cautiously long, keeping dry powder ready, as she anticipates volatile moves and tactical opportunities. Turning back to Bitcoin, John Hart, managing director of Swan Bitcoin, stated that Bitcoin is likely to perform better with a Trump victory. Markets seem to favor a Trump win, and that's likely reflected in current pricing, he explained. Hart believes a Trump win could push Bitcoin higher in the short term, while a Harris win could have the opposite effect. However, over the long term, the fundamentals for Bitcoin remain strong, driven by government spending, Fed monetary policy, and ongoing adoption. Finally, in the event of a contested election, Dugirala warns that market volatility could spike. Morrison also emphasized the importance of a clear winner on November 6th, cautioning that prolonged uncertainty, as seen during the 2000 election, could lead to a major sell-off. Back then, the SP 500 dropped 10% during the month-long dispute that was eventually resolved by the Supreme Court. In the long run, both Bitcoin and gold seem to have a positive outlook regardless of the election outcome. And now let's continue with the DXY, as you know, the US dollar index. The first thing you need to know is that we have reached one of the targets I left for you the last week, which was located here at the 103.816. As you can see here, once the price touches this point of the price, which is located here, and manipulates that point of the price, we could see that we had a strong upward movement, which was through this direction, through an upward movement. Based on a 4 hours interval for this week, we can expect more downward movements, and it's always depending of what happens with the US elections. So it's highly possible that if we continue with a downward movement, we can establish an objective or a target here at 103.679, and we can also maintain this target located at 103.421, two of the targets for the bearish movements that we can expect for this week. On the other hand, if you are expecting an upward movement, maybe one of the main targets for this week at 104.436. So both of these targets you can use for your take profits, or also targets that the price could manipulate in order to have a reaction. Now talking about the SP 500, we could see one of the objectives we have reached, which was located at $5,795. We have seen such a bearish movement that went from $5,811 to $5,775. So with this information, we can establish here the vacuum block, which is also one of the targets that the price could reach for the bullish movements for this week. We keep also the next target in the $5,878. And if we are talking about bearish targets, the first one we can establish here at $5,702. And the next one, I like this point of the price, $5,674. Before we see a new movement from the price, whether it's an upward or a downward movement, we need first to see that this vacuum block is completed. So once it's filled, we can see a new movement with more accuracy. Now we can continue with the next one, euro dollar. The last week we have projected this movement, which as you can see it was a really good projection. So the things we need to consider: the price have reached both of the bullish targets that we have established. One was located at 1.08382, and the other one we have established it at 1.08719. Both of these targets have been completed successfully, and maybe after we have reached these targets, we need to see a correction, which is happening right now. We are seeing a pullback from the price. So for this week, before doing a new upward movement, we could see that the price could fall to 1.08082. After this, maybe we can see this kind of manipulation from the price and we can see a new upward movement. And finally, another bearish target for the week. In case the price does not stop to fall, we can maintain the same bearish target at 1.07613. Finally, just to take into account one bullish target, I would like you to consider 1.09058 as one of the most important bullish targets for this week. And the last asset we always assess is Bitcoin, one of the most important assets, at least for me, because I trade this asset every day. It's important to consider that with Bitcoin, we have almost reached a new all-time high this week, $73,624. After this strong upward movement, we have saw that the price is falling down until today, that we are seeing a reaction from the price, an upward movement, before we can keep falling with Bitcoin. Remember that maybe this correction that we are seeing from the price of Bitcoin can be related with the US presidential election. So it is not a surprise that we are seeing these kind of things with Bitcoin and also with other assets. So for this week, I would like to consider several targets. Maybe one of the most important bullish targets are located here, $69,891. I would also take into account this target of the price, which is located at $68,937. And last but not least, maybe we can take into consideration the last high we had with Bitcoin. At least this is a daily target located at $73,624. Finally, just don't forget all the bearish target we have been talking about these last weeks. One of them is $65,000. The next one is $63,421, and the last one $61,671. All of them are bearish targets in case Bitcoin doesn't stop its downward movement. As we have seen, several assets like Bitcoin, gold, the SP 500, the euro dollar is moving because of the US presidential election, and there is a lot of potential ahead. So don't miss out on these opportunities and register with our broker Xchief in order to trade all the assets we have seen today. You can use the link in the description if you also want to trade. Finally, if you enjoyed this analysis, don't forget to give thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more insights. See you in the next video.